All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Let's do it. Always up for a good deep dive.
Today, we're going to tackle something that I think has been a really interesting puzzle for a lot of football fans. Uh, the kind of unexpected comeback of Harry Maguire at Manchester United.
Yeah, what a story.
Yeah, I mean, this is a player who went from captain to the bench, really went from fan favorite to a target of a lot of very, very harsh criticism.
Definitely a lot of people had written him off.
And now he's seemingly, back in form, getting a lot of praise, especially for his performances against like the top teams.
It's a remarkable turnaround for sure.
So I guess that's what we're going to dig into today.
Mm.
How did this happen? What are the factors that had contributed to this kind of resurgence for Harry Maguire?
Yeah, it's not like he just suddenly rediscovered his old form, There's a deeper story here.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta think there's got to be more to it.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going to look at tactical shifts, data, a bit of psychology even, to really understand how this comeback happened.
You mentioned the tactics, and I think that's a perfect place to start, especially when you consider the arrival of Ruben Amorim as manager.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a lot of talk, even speculation, that Maguire wouldn't fit into Amorim's system at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Amorim is known for that really dynamic, possession-based style of play.
Right.
And, on the surface, it didn't seem like a natural fit for a player like Maguire, who, had struggled in the past with building play from the back.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big question mark for a lot of people.
But Amorim made a really interesting change, a key tactical change that I think played a huge role in this whole Maguire revival. He switched to a back three.
Okay, now for those of us who might not be as familiar with formations, can you just break down how a back three differs from the traditional back four and why that might be more beneficial for someone like Maguire?
Sure, yeah. So in a back three, you essentially have three central defenders instead of two, right?
Right.
So this gives you more cover at the back, and it allows those wider center backs to be a bit more proactive, step out and engage attackers, knowing that they've got that extra man in the middle.
Okay.
And this kind of setup really plays to Maguire's strengths.
Oh, interesting.
Because his physical presence and his aerial dominance become much more valuable in that system because he doesn't have to cover as much ground laterally.
So it's less about him suddenly becoming this incredible, like, ball-playing defender.
Right.
And more about putting him in a position where he can just focus on what he's really good at.
Exactly. It's about playing to his strengths.
Okay, now I think it's time for the good stuff. Let's dive into the data.
Let's do it.
Because I think the numbers really tell a story here.
They do. They paint a very interesting picture.
So let's hear that. What do the stats have to say about Maguire's transformation under Amorim?
Okay, so under Amorim, one of the first things you notice is that Maguire's touches per game have gone down noticeably.
Okay.
And what that tells us is that he's less involved in that initial build-up play, which, we talked about earlier. That was sort of a weak point for him in the past.
Right, yeah.
So instead of that, he's focusing on a much more streamlined defensive role.
So less passing, less dribbling out from the back.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a big change from what he was doing before?
It is, and it seems very deliberate.
Mm.
Like his passes, even the ones he does make, they've become more conservative, more about keeping possessions safe in the defensive third or just quickly getting the ball to a teammate who's better suited for attacking.
Interesting.
It's almost like Amorim looked at what Maguire did well and what he struggled with and said, okay, let's strip everything back and just let him excel in these specific areas.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Like tailoring the tactics to fit the player rather than the other way around.
It makes you wonder, was this like a gamble that paid off, or was this a carefully calculated strategy from Amorim?
That's a great question, and it really gets at the heart of how managers assess and utilize their players, which is something I think we need to explore further as we dig deeper into this whole Maguire situation.
I like it. So we've established that Maguire is touching the ball less, passing more conservatively. But what about his actual defending? Like, has that improved? That's what I'm really curious about.
Let's get into it. Yeah, has it improved? Well, to really see, I think we need to bring in some data.
Oh, here we go. Data deep dive. All right, let's hear it. What does it say about his defending under Amorim?
All right, so to get a really good picture of this, we can look at some specific Opta stats. For anyone listening who might not be familiar, Opta is basically, it's a company that just provides incredibly detailed performance data for football, and it's become like the gold standard for analyzing, players and teams.
So what does Opta tell us about Maguire's defense? Like, has he actually stepped up his game?
Well, one of the key things, one of the areas where we see big improvement is his aerial duel success rate.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's way higher this season, which, you know, thinking about it, that makes sense considering the back three, right? It allows him to just position himself way better for those aerial challenges.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's classic Maguire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Winning those headers.
Exactly.
But is it just duels? Are there other stats that kind of show this improvement in his defense?
Yeah, for sure. So we also see an increase in his clearances and blocks per game,
Okay.
which is a great indicator of like his proactive defending. You know, he's reading the game well, anticipating danger, and then stepping in to clear the ball decisively.
Hmm.
You know, a perfect example of this, I think, was that match against Arsenal after their red card.
Oh, yeah.
He was incredible in that game. 11 clearances, 5 blocks. He single-handedly kept Arsenal from scoring, it felt like.
Wow, that's impressive.
It really was.
Okay, so the data's pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
More duels won, more clearances, just a more imposing presence in defense overall.
Right.
But, you know, we have to talk about this. There was a concern that maybe he's too slow to handle, like the really fast attackers.
Uh-huh.
So how has he fared against, like, the really pacey guys?
Well, this is where that tactical shift becomes, like, super important because that back three gives him more cover, you know? So he doesn't have to worry as much about getting beaten for pace.
Right, right.
So he can really focus on his positioning and his strength, which are, you know, his biggest assets.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, Amorim has implemented this more compact defensive structure overall, which basically means that, you know, the midfielders are positioned closer to the defenders, offering more support.
Gotcha, so less space for those really quick attackers to exploit.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's really a team effort, but Maguire is definitely reaping the benefits of this new system.
For sure, for sure. Okay, but, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We got to address the elephant in the room.
Oh,
Yeah, his offensive contributions. Right. Like you said, he's less involved in build-up play now. So does that mean, like, his attacking output has just vanished?
Yeah, I mean, it is true. We have seen a bit of a dip in some of those attacking metrics, especially his progressive carries.
Okay.
You know, those runs he used to make with the ball that moved the team up the pitch significantly.
Yeah, I remember those.
Right, so he's not doing those as often.
Yeah.
But I think you could argue this is kind of a necessary trade-off.
Oh, okay. How so?
Because by, you know, simplifying his role and focusing on his strengths defensively, he's become way more effective at preventing goals.
I mean, that's fair.
Right. So if he's part of a more solid unit overall, then maybe those lost carries aren't that big of a deal, especially if the team is still creating chances in other ways.
Right. Exactly. You got to look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it really seems like Amorim is totally fine with this trade-off. He even recently, you know, when they were talking about Maguire's new contract extension, he called it a no-brainer.
Wow. High praise.
Yeah.
Yeah. And specifically, he praised his defensive solidity and his leadership.
So from scapegoat to a key player in Amorim's plans,
Yeah.
what a turnaround story, huh?
It really is. It's pretty remarkable.
But, you know, the big question now is, can he keep this up? Can he continue to be this rock at the back for Manchester United?
That's the million-dollar question. I mean, it is still early days, but the early signs are very promising.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is he seems to have found his confidence again.
Yeah.
And with these tactical changes, he's in a much better position to succeed.
It really shows you the importance of, you know, finding the right tactical fit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like a player can be, you know, considered a bust in one system and then totally thrive in another.
That's one of the most fascinating things about football, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about, you know, sometimes it's just the right coach with the right vision can unlock a player's potential. And Maguire's story is, I think, a great example of that.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that, you know, just a few months ago, so many people, so many fans, so many, you know, pundits, they were writing Maguire off. They were done with him.
Yeah, it really felt like he was at a crossroads in his career.
And now he's being talked about as one of the main reasons for Manchester United's defensive improvement. It's a complete 180.
Yeah, and it just shows you, you know, it says a lot about his character, his professionalism. I mean, he could have easily just, you know, crumbled under all that pressure,
Yeah.
all that criticism.
Folded.
Yeah, but, you know, he didn't. He seemed to use it, you know, as fuel to work harder and prove everybody wrong.
Yeah, you got to respect that mental toughness.
For sure.
And it's not just about individual effort, right? Like, Amorim deserves some serious credit here, too.
Oh, absolutely. He deserves a ton of credit for seeing what Maguire could do, you know, recognizing his strengths.
And building a system that brings out the best in him.
Yeah, Amram's tactical awareness, I mean, it's pretty undeniable at this point.
Oh, for sure. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to that.
Like, he took a player who was, really struggling and found a way to make him effective in a completely different setup.
Yeah, that's the mark of a great manager.
It makes you think, though, like, how many other players are out there who are maybe being misjudged or underutilized because they're just not in the right environment?
That's a really good question. It speaks to the importance of good coaching and, having that tactical flexibility in football.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. We shouldn't be so quick to judge players, label them as, failures or washed up.
Right.
Because sometimes, a change of scenery, a fresh perspective, that's all it takes to unlock their true potential.
Absolutely.
And in Maguire's case, it seems like he's found, the perfect combination, right? He's got a system that works for him, a manager who believes in him, and that motivation to prove himself.
Yeah, all the pieces seem to be falling into place for him now.
And that's translating into, week after week, consistently solid performances.
Yeah, he's looking more and more like the player we all thought he could be.
So the big question, I guess, is can he keep this up?
Hmm.
Can he be this rock at the back for United, long term?
It's tough to say for sure, but like I said, the early signs are definitely promising.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is he seems to have that confidence back. He's enjoying the game again.
Yeah, that's huge.
And with Emram there, guiding him, supporting him, and with this system that plays to his strengths, I don't see why he can't continue to thrive at Old Trafford.
Well, this has been a really, really fascinating look at, a story that goes beyond just the usual football narratives,
Yeah.
right? It's about resilience, it's about adaptation, and it's about the power of belief. I mean, Maguire's comeback is pretty inspiring.
For sure, for sure.
It shows us that even when things look, really tough,
Mhm.
a shift in perspective, the right environment, can lead to some amazing transformations.
Well said. It's a reminder that in football, just like in life, you should never underestimate the power of a comeback story.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and, never lose sight of the possibility of second chance.
Well said.